Our good friend Mr. Denny Faulkner, a PhD in astronomy, has done a response video to Nathan Thompson. Finally, he's answered the question, how do you have gas pressure without a container? Nathan asked him that question.
I can't hear anything. Am I going nuts? I'm monitoring the show and I can't hear anything on YouTube.
But it's refreshing.
No, the sound's good. Right, we need to just check. Meekin, got you all on audio now. Yes, they can all hear us, Nathan.
Okay.
So, Nathan Thompson got to Danny Faulkner. Nathan, you need to add us on Skype, mate. Your invite has been sent. Let's see if we can get Nathan added. No, he hasn't. Nathan, you need to add us on Skype. And he managed to get Danny Faulkner cornered with the usual question, how do you have gas pressure without a container? Interestingly, he's responded on Answers in Genesis website. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to play a couple of clips, historic clips, just to give a little bit of background to those that may or may not be aware of the situation, because it's glorious. And it's basically Nathan Thompson's, probably, I would say, it's probably his finest hour, although it was described by Danny Faulkner as an ambush, which it clearly was not. Danny Faulkner has written a book about, what he calls it, falling flat, where he claims to refute the claims made by the flat earthers. And in his chapter based on gravity, for some reason he didn't even mention the current physics. For some reason he didn't mention that, well, Einstein is the current physics. And you know what? It's not that good, Danny Faulkner. So without further ado, I'm going to play a little clip that was from the time. It looks like it's around about 6 months old. So here's a little clip for Danny Faulkner.
Because that's how we roll as astrophysicists.
Sit back, enjoy this, and appreciate our PhD astronomer was cornered by a flat earther. And remember, this guy claims that he's never been cornered by, or he's never failed to respond to something asked by a flat earther. Well, this is the moment where he does.
Yeah, I think people that first encounter flat Earth, they all say, "Well, I once believed that it was a stupid idea, but I tried to refute it and I couldn't." Well, that's because you didn't go to the right sources. You went on the internet and you heard these arguments from flat earthers that you couldn't answer.
Yeah,
that's because you didn't know the answers. I know the answers. I haven't encountered an argument yet I couldn't refute.
So how do you have gas pressure without a container? Nothing? Danny Faulkner, PhD astrophysicist, runs an observatory, and profits from the lies.
I know the answers. I haven't encountered an argument yet I couldn't refute. I haven't encountered an argument yet I couldn't refute.
I hear you, Anthony.
Okay, so I'm gonna while I clear my throat, just gonna put this on screen. The definition of the word refute: prove a statement or theory to be wrong or false, or disprove. He hasn't found an argument yet he's not been able to refute. Yet, when asked, he wasn't able to provide a single coherent sentence for how you have gas pressure next to a vacuum without some kind of barrier. Well, today is a bad day for Danny Faulkner. We're about to go through his official response to Nathan Thompson. This is going to be glorious. I hope you remember this hangout, because this is a PhD astronomer who has never found an argument yet he hasn't been able to refute. Well, Danny, today is that day. John, have you had a chance to view the documents that I sent to you earlier on today?
Yes, I have them screen shared. Let me know when it's up.
I believe you are now screen sharing, sir.
Yes, this is a document you sent me today. I hadn't seen it before. It looked like it was published in December.
Yeah, December. Just gone.
Go ahead. Yeah. So I looked at it today for the first time, and I was really amused. And we're going to go through this. We're going to read through just a little section. We're going to read through the ambush. I love that colorful language. And the vacuum of space. It's not all that long. And I will give my usual analysis to his color commentary. How about that? Here we go. Oh, and is Nathan Thompson here?
Not yet. I'm hoping that he's added a... No, he hasn't sent me a request yet. Nathan Thompson, if you are wanting to join, add me on Skype. Let's do it. If not, John, take it away.
Nathan, did you have anything?
No, I've got nothing. You carry on.
All right, here we go. We're starting an ambush, but Nathan wasn't finished, and that comes from his talk up here. I don't want to get into his star. It looks like some type of moon shadow stuff up there. I don't really care about that. So the ambush, but Nathan wasn't finished. I wrote earlier that there was one exception to the overall good treatment that flat earthers extended me at the FEIC. The final evening of the meeting, I was slowly walking in the hallway looking at the vendor tables when Nathan came up behind me. He placed one hand on my shoulder with his cell phone recording on the other hand. He then began loudly asking me condescending and inflammatory questions, such as how it felt to see the globe Earth model demolished at the FEIC, and why I was lying about the Earth's shape. Nathan is famous for these sort of guerrilla tactics. Oh, you're speaking my love language. He wasn't looking for answers to his questions. Oh, Danny, are you divining Nathan's thoughts and motives now? That's interesting. He was looking for a reaction from me that he could place on the internet. Wow, scary. I immediately knew that anything I might say would be edited and put on the internet with Nathan putting his own spin on it. So I said nothing. I'm sure that's the case. I kept walking with a smile on my face. I even chuckled a few times because Nathan was being so outrageous. It was a little funny. I made my way to where I was sitting for the closing session. After I sat down, Nathan continued the barrage. He said that I was lying to children, and based upon Matthew 18:6, I ought to kill myself. When he seemed to reach a conclusion, I finally spoke and asked Nathan if he had asked my permission to record me. He responded that he hadn't, and immediately asked if I had asked permission before I lied to children. And some people wonder why I was doing my best to ignore Nathan. Various versions of this interview have appeared on the internet since, with much editing and commenting by Nathan and other flat earthers. The one question that I ignored that seems to have attracted the most attention was, so how do you have gas pressure without a container? This part of the video has made its way on flat earth websites. So I've been asked questions several times since the FEIC. Therefore, I'll take the time to answer it here. Any comments thus far?
No.
No, not for me.
Can I just say that there was very little editing? He's lying. The way Nathan asked the question is exactly the way he asked the question. There was no editing.
This is periphery.
Yes.
Who cares? Who cares?
Yeah, who cares anyway? But he's right. There was no editing. No one did anything. So I don't know. He might consider, since he's divining people's thoughts, about maybe getting a side job, barking for the yak woman, right? That could be a possibility. Or being a pixie dust spreader on a tilt-a-whirl. How about that, Danny? It's going to get worse for you. I've already toe tagged you twice on my channel. This is the third one. Here we go. The vacuum of space. First, some background on Nathan's question. That's Nathan Thompson. One of the arguments that flat earthers use is that in the conventional cosmology, whatever that is, there is the vacuum of space sitting next to the pressure of the Earth's atmosphere. Flat earthers reason that this is impossible, so the conventional cosmology must be wrong. Flat earthers insist that you can't have air pressure next to a vacuum without a container. Since the FEIC, flat earthers increasingly have asked me to give an example, just one example, of high pressure that exists apart from a container to hold that pressure in. Why the sudden surge in this one argument directed primarily at me? Pretentious Danny. We've been asking this question since the beginning to every one of you, not just you, okay?
And secondly, let me just add.
Go ahead.
He also said he hasn't been able to answer a question that he's been asked by. He hasn't been able to refute a question that he's whatever by us lot. Well, this is the question that we were specifically targeting to you because you made the claim that there wasn't anything that you've been unable to refute. So, well, what's one of the better questions that we can simply ask that is going to cause you a problem? And we knew it would cause you a problem. That's why Nathan Thompson was sent to cause you a problem. It isn't our fault that you couldn't answer him, Danny.
I just had to make, as well as there's been an interruption. It was stated that flat earthers claim you can't have gas pressure without a container. No, that would be natural law. Not flat earthers claiming it, natural law. Dictated.
Nicely done. Thank you. So we're going to get a color commentary here. He's trying to build something up. It wasn't just for you, Danny. So I don't know what you're thinking here. I will continue. The only thing I can figure is that at least one flat earther read my book and realized that this is one flat earth argument that I didn't discuss. Danny, I have never read your book. I don't know of anyone who has read your book. There isn't some plan we've been hatching or pretending to put together for the past 3 years and then just decided to hatch it now. You know, you haven't busted us, you pretentious knucklehead.
Can I just add? I have actually read his book. This is the guy that wrote a book claiming to refute the claims of the flat earthers and then didn't mention Einstein when he was talking about gravity. He constantly talked about Newtonian physics. And we all know the position. It's not the current physics. Einstein is. So I've read that bit. And do you know what, Danny? I wasn't impressed because it was nothing that is current. It's everything that is antiquated. And unfortunately, that's not good enough when we're talking about current physics and whether or not we're on a sphere or not. Sorry, Danny.
This next one is delusional. Listen to this, folks. If flat earthers are spending their time bringing up things I didn't discuss in my book, rather than the things I did discuss, that must mean that my refutation is very good. Though perhaps incomplete. Your science acumen is hovering somewhere around first, second grade. Not only that, you're delusional. This is delusional psychosis, friend. Unbelievable. We'll continue. When I get this question from flat earthers, I generally ask them several questions to gauge how much they know about these gases' behavior. I've never gotten very far with any of them. Really? Nice anecdotal fallacy here. Do you have any friggin' cowbell to back this up? You never asked. I'll tell you what, in 2016, I asked you the same question. I got it in an email, too, if we ever need to go back there, Danny. I asked you this very same question. Guess what you said? Hydrostatic equilibrium. So you're a liar. Remember, I told you also that there's only two choices that we have with you at the end of our little so-called debate. You're either number one, incompetent, or number two, you're a liar. All right? You remember that, Danny? I know you do. We'll continue. I have never gotten very far with any of them, indicating that flat earthers know practically nothing about such matters. Non sequitur conclusion based on an anecdotal fallacy, Danny. There appear to be several misunderstandings that flat earthers have about gases and vacuums. Really? Like what? Oh, here you go. First, what is a vacuum? Most dictionary definitions are something like a space entirely devoid of matter. But if that is what a vacuum is, for goodness sakes, then there is no such thing as a vacuum. Really? Because there is no place in the universe that is entirely devoid of matter. So he just conjures this. This is a PhD in astrophysics. So Danny Faulkner, let me keep my space right here so I don't miss it. Dr. Danny Faulkner, from your alma mater wiki, this is what we're talking about when we talk about vacuums, okay? We're usually talking in this section right here from high vacuum, ultra high vacuum, extremely high vacuum, outer space. We don't much care about a perfect vacuum because that ain't happening, right? So you see these values right here. This is what we consider vacuums. And then we identify them with their appropriate name. You see how I did that? So let's just go like this. 10 to the negative 3 to 10 to the negative 9 torr is a high vacuum. An ultra high vacuum is 10 to the negative 9 times 10 to the negative 12 torr. And an extremely high vacuum is somewhere in the vicinity or less than 10 to the negative 12 torr. Did you follow this? Outer space, you see this number that we use all the time? 10 to the negative 17th torr. So this is where we get vacuums from, not your colloquial definition of a vacuum, completely devoid of matter, red herring fallacy. This is pathetic that I would even have to go there, Mr. PhD. No knowledgeable person claims that space is entirely devoid of matter. Yeah, no kidding. So by this definition, space can't be a vacuum. You are unbelievable numpty, sir. This is numpty. There's no other way to describe this. And if you can't see that out here, that this is numpty, then you got some serious issues. You got bigger issues than whether the earth is flat or a sphere. Tell you that much. I'll continue. In physics, this guy doesn't even know what the scientific method is, but he's going to speak to physics. In physics, we often deal with idealized situations. Really? And if this is the definition of a vacuum, then a vacuum certainly is idealized. So what you do is you build this story up of what a vacuum is in your mind from the colloquial definition, then make a conclusion of what you just conjured. I mean, you should be institutionalized. Practically speaking, then what is a vacuum? That thing between your ears, Danny. That's what it is. A vacuum is a place of lower pressure. Now you got to get a bit more specific than that. And I just did that, right? There are many examples of vacuums. Yeah, like between your ears. Listen to this. Sucking on a straw creates a vacuum. An internal combustion engine produces a vacuum that can be harnessed to power various devices. The best example of these devices is a carburetor. My word. Right? I've owned 2 old automobiles, here we go, that use the vacuum to power the windshield wipers. Astonishing, Danny. The ductwork for the heating and the air conditioning in many cars operate with vacuum balls that run off the vacuum produced by the engine. Amazing. What is the difference between these vacuums and the vacuum of space? The latter vacuum is much harder. Much harder? Mic discipline, please. Meaning that it has far less pressure than those other vacuums. Really? But make no mistake, while it's feeble, there is a pressure in space. There is no fundamental difference between space and other vacuums. It is merely a matter of degree. Yeah, exponential magnitudes, Danny boy. You see this? So outer space at 10 to the negative 17th torr to 760 torr, you realize the magnitude difference here. I know you don't. You don't know math. Have you been talking to Flat Earth Math? You know, the double-blind chemist? I digress. That brings up the second question. I'm scared to even go further than this, Danny. I ask flat earthers about this subject. Here comes some more anecdotal fallacies. What? Oh my God. Check this one out. What is the mechanism that compels gas at higher pressure to move towards gas at a lower pressure? A vacuum. Danny, we're talking about the second law of thermodynamics, the laws of entropy. There are no mechanisms for natural laws because natural laws are descriptions, Danny. So your question here has just exposed you as a numpty dipshit of epic proportions with a science acumen hovering around first grade. You see what he did here? My word, this question is inane. It can't be answered. It's a malformed question. Again, the flat earthers that I've talked to can't answer that question. That's right, because there is no answer to that question, Danny. What's the mechanism for entropy, Danny? I want to see the experiment. My word.
Can
I
just interject
can't
there?
fault.
Sorry.
Yeah, I can stop right there. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, just for the audience's benefit, so to rephrase the question in a more simplistic term, if this was to be put to Danny Faulkner, it would be, what is the cause of hot going to cold always? What causes that? There is no answer. It's a natural law. It's a description. Entropy describes what's happening. It doesn't explain the cause. If it had a causal explanation, it would be a scientifically valid explanation, and therefore wouldn't be a natural law anymore.
Exactly. It would be a scientific theory. So, Danny, if you want us to explain the second law of thermodynamics, then you have to violate, then debunk the second law of thermodynamics, then come up with the second theory of thermodynamics. What a freaking bozo you are, sir. So, listen, that's not an ad hom. I mean, I've got cowbell till the cows come home to support that assessment.
Well,
don't I?
Well, yeah, you've done it. And as we're on a slight interruption, you asked earlier, liar or fool? Well, self-absorbed Dunning-Kruger fool.
Well,
yeah, this is a PhD teaching your kids. You're paying through the nose for this guy. Down.
The thing is, there's two things with Danny Faulkner. He makes the claims that we can't address anything that he says, or that he can answer everything that we say, right? The guy does not want to talk to us. John, let's try something live. On the left-hand side there, you've got Danny Faulkner blog updates. Just put in an email address that you can try and subscribe to him on. I tried to do it earlier 3 times and it wouldn't let me do it, as if I was blocked. I'm just curious, are you able to do it yourself with an email address that you don't mind being spammed a little bit? Because it's curious.
No, I'm not putting my email in there.
For some reason, it refused to do me when I tried to do it, and I wonder why. Yeah, we know why. It's because Danny Faulkner does not want to talk to us one-to-one.
Don't ruin this presentation with your speculation.
Yeah. Let's stick to what we know and what we can do. He probably blocked you. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, he definitely did.
You're just as bad. We don't know that. Just let's move on.
Yeah, we don't. It's not a big deal. Yeah, let's move on. Here we go. They seem to think that vacuums have this magical property of simply sucking everything toward them. No, that's Zanuck. So, Dr. Danny Faulkner, get in touch with Zanuck. He's on Science vs. Pseudoscience, Betty's Discord, and contact Zanuck because that's what he thinks. He's not a flat earther either. I can't fault flat earthers too much on this point because this is a common misconception. But vacuums don't suck. Yeah, I know. We all know that. Pressure is the force per unit area. That's surface area, Danny. Pressure is the force per unit surface area. If adjacent regions separated by an area are at different pressures, then there will be a force across that area equal to the product of the pressure and the area. It is this force that pushes air. Huh? It is this force that pushes air or any other fluid from a region of higher pressure to a region of lower pressure. No, it's not. It's entropy. Are you calling entropy a force? Like the entropic force? I think the Baltards would like to have some words with you. Just bring it up. Maybe you'll convince them. Maybe it'll be like Jedi mind trick or something. It's called entropy. My word. Hence the force. Here we go. These guys and their forces. Hence, the force pushes fluids from higher to lower pressure. The force doesn't pull fluid towards lower pressure from higher pressure. A good example of this is sucking on a straw. Here we go with sucking on a straw again, Danny. You have some type of oral fixation we need to devote some time to? A good example of this sucking on a straw to bring a beverage up the tube. Sucking the upper end of a straw produces a vacuum there. My word. It is the higher air pressure on the beverage and the bottle or glass that provides a force that drives it. You're full of crap. Clearly, the greater the pressure difference, the greater the force. Here he goes again. He's calling it a force, tending to equalize the pressures. This is why a pressure difference in a static situation usually requires a container. Usually? Really? When doesn't it? Think of the thick walls of a high-pressure gas cylinder. If the wall is breached, the higher pressure gas rapidly expands through the breach. Well, yeah, duh. It's attempting to increase entropy, Danny. But there is nothing magical about it. No, it's the second law of thermodynamics. It is all in accordance with what we know about how gases behave. Here we go with the force again. The force driving the outward motion of gas equals the product of the pressure difference. Yeah. And the area of the breach, sure. This brings up the question that flat earthers ask, how can the gas pressure of the atmosphere exist next to the vacuum of space without a container? Yeah, that's been the question that we've been asking. Which leads to, well, that is the claim, more or less. The question that is derived from that is, how can you have gas pressure without a container? It follows from this statement. To prove their point, they demand one example of a gas at higher pressure existing next to a vacuum, lower pressure, without a barrier or a container.
Hold on.
Here we go. Get ready.
Hold on.
Go ahead.
When I asked that, I put in a very specific caveat. I say, without asserting your fundamentalist religious belief that the sky is a vacuum. So I put a caveat in.
Guys, let me just drop from this call for 2 seconds. I think then I can add Nathan Thompson. Give me 2 seconds. I'll be straight back.
Okay.
I now join the call.
The live stream.
No, we're good. Now I think I should now be able to invite and get into the call Mr. Thompson. So we've now got that live stream back on. We're still screen sharing. Okay. And just bear with me 1 second. I believe... No, not that one.
Just why are you doing this, Anthony? We're at the crescendo.
We are. I'm gonna
You're spoiling this climax.
John, carry on, sir, whilst you climax.
We still like... Mike, this please. Let's go back to the previous sentence because Danny's getting ready to give us the answer here. So, to prove their point, they demand one example of gas at higher pressure existing next to a vacuum, lower pressure, without a barrier or a container. You can find the answer to that question in the atmosphere itself. Nearly everyone knows that air pressure decreases. So, he's given, just walk outside and gas pressure gradients. That's his answers, right? That's funny, Danny, because in my gas pressure presentation, existing next to a vacuum, lower pressure. You got to turn your live stream.
Mute your live stream, Nathan.
You can find. There you go. So, Danny Faulkner gives And these are the first two out of the gate. Let's see what I do in my gas pressure presentation. Empty challenges to gas pressure needing a container from the peanut gallery. Ballers claim the Earth is a containerless, open pressurized system. Ballers evidence, walk outside. There you go, Danny. I already had you pegged. This Elmer Fudd circle jerk of the millennium. Mr. Magoo is blushing, sir. This is tantamount to claim the wind is generated by black holes interacting with dark energy. Your evidence, walk outside. That's how stupid. You're a PhD. You'd fail a 50-level basic reasoning course. This is a joke. What you want me to do with this? Walk outside? You didn't prove anything. You just proved it. You walked outside. It's a circle jerk. It's begging the question. Circular banjo do-si-do right off the bat. Your next statement that was attached was gas pressure gradients. Guess what my second point was? Gas pressure gradients. I've been waiting here for you with the flamethrower. So here we go. This is short. Why do spinning space monkeys, that's trademarked by the way, continue to wholesale dodge the very simple questions to support their fairy tale religion? This is the question. How do you have gas pressure without a container? It's very simple. The baguette response, how do we have gas pressure gradients? Just like Danny appealed to. You brain surgeons actually think this double your pleasure fallacy is a reasoned response to the question. If so, you're a full-on ICD-10F72 code. Go ahead and look up what that is. We'll hold your hand. Which comes first, dozy duffers? One, gas pressure, that is X, or gas pressure gradients, delta X. Very simple. There can't be a delta X before there's an X. In other words, Citus Vetus, before number two, number one must frigging exist.
Yeah.
So, back to where we started. How do you have gas pressure without a container, Danny? My word.
Can I add something there?
Yeah, this is a natural stop. Go ahead.
It's actually an assertion that we can make, obviously with qualification. So if I was to assert as a proof that we definitely don't have a vacuum of the sky, I can say just walk outside, you will experience the gas pressure we depend on to breathe, proving we have gas pressure. Therefore, it must be pressing on something. It requires the necessary antecedent of a container. So the fact that you can go outside and experience gas pressure means it must be pressing on something. So with qualification, we can make that argument. However, to take that argument from their side is merely to beg the question. Well, I assume the sky's a vacuum, and I go outside and there is still gas pressure. Therefore, obviously, we can have gas pressure without a container. Our atmosphere is an example of it, because I assume the sky's a vacuum and it hasn't sucked the air away, so it must still be a vacuum. No, circular reasoning.
Yeah, he does come to that in a sec, and that's going to be my bit to interrupt. But whilst we're here, Nathan Thompson, do you want to do a mic check and just say hi?
Hi, can you guys hear me? Thanks for having me on.
Loud and clear, sir. This is the final moment where he's finally got to answer your question, when he sat there like a sitting duck in the headlights or whatever, crosshairs or whatever. He's now answered the question, and it's just utterly ridiculous. Yet he's the guy that A, wrote a book about refuting the claims of the flat earthers but didn't mention Einstein and gravity, and B, claims that he hasn't come across an argument he's not been able to refute yet. Yet when he's given his full-on detailed answer in his one-way circle jerk echo chamber known as Answers in Genesis, he's made an absolute complete hash of it. So take you back to that moment, Nathan, and just when we get towards the end of John's point, because he's nearly done, I just want you to tell us all about that moment, because it was, for me, it was the best, one of your best moments, mate. So John, do you want to carry on, and then we'll come back to Nathan Thompson at the end?
Sure. Yep. Very short. To finish up, mic discipline, please. So you can find the answer to that question in the atmosphere itself. We already went over that. Nearly everyone knows that air pressure decreases. Where'd you get the pressure from, Danny? With increasing elevation, here we go again. For instance, the air pressure atop Pikes Peak, that's 14,100 feet above sea level, is about 60% of the air pressure at sea level. Anyone who has driven through the mountains can attest to this. Our ears pop from the pressure changes we experience as we gain or lose elevation. With a good barometer, anyone can test this for themselves and obtain quantitative results. We say that there is a pressure gradient in the atmosphere. That kind of didn't answer our question, Danny. We said, how do you have gas pressure without a container? Not about gas pressure gradients, son. Wow. This gradient is smooth, meaning that it doesn't make sudden jumps. Therefore, as I am typing this, the air around my head is at a very slightly lower pressure than the air around my feet. Pick any 2 points in the air with one directly above the other, and you will have an example of a vacuum. Really? Is that a high vacuum? Medium vacuum? Let's go back there. In fact, let's see that. We'll have a vacuum. Okay. What type of vacuum are we going to have here? We going to have a high vacuum? Ultra high vacuum? An extremely high vacuum? Which vacuum are we going to have, Danny? Or are you going to equivocate fallacy till the cows come home from your conjured definition of vacuum? You circle jerking bozo? About to piss me off. Pick any 2 points in the air with one. Yeah, I already did that. Sorry. Therefore, I have answered the flat Earth challenge. Yeah. And Anna Nicole married for love, and Pol Pot was her florist. These people are delusional.
What he's actually done is asserted his fundamentalist religious belief that the sky is a vacuum as his proof that the sky is a vacuum. That's what he's actually done.
Yep. Let me finish up. Last sentence. Therefore, I have answered the flat Earth challenge of giving an example of such a thing, though I expect very few flat earthers to acknowledge that fact. Oh, we acknowledge it. All right, Danny. You're finished. I don't even know how you can show up the next university's probably closed. If your students listen to this, I'd be shocked if they didn't just go to what the heck is the place called where you sign up for classes and disengage from your course. I would. If they can't, let me finish it up. Let me finish this up. Sorry.
Okay.
Therefore, I have answered the flat Earth challenge of giving an example of such a thing, though I expect very few flat earthers to acknowledge that fact. If they can't or won't understand this, it's not my fault. That's it. Unbelievable.
Who is it that said if your theory stands in violation of the second law of thermodynamics, then you're in bad shape? Was it Feynman?
Yeah.
No. What's his name? Oh man.
Just before, it's not relevant. Does the rebuttal that he has provided, Danny Faulkner, stand in violation of the second law of thermodynamics or not?
I think he conjured something in place of the second law of thermodynamics. He conjured some type of force. Yeah, air pressure is a force, but it's called entropy. When things go from high pressure to low pressure, it's just called entropy, right? Now, he can call it an entropic force. There's stuff out in the literature that talks about that. I don't want to go down that road. All I'm saying here is he's got so many logical fallacies in here, anecdotal fallacies, stereotype fallacies, non sequiturs, delusional non sequiturs. And we've already been through this. So he didn't even mention the second law or entropy in this entire discussion, did he?
I appreciate that, but what I'm saying is, regardless of the nonsense he conjured about possibly entropic forces, is his claim that by going outside you prove the sky is a vacuum, does that or does that not stand in violation of the second law of thermodynamics?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, he is the poster child for a violation of the second law of thermodynamics. Yes. And it was Arthur Eddington that said, if your theory is against the second law of thermodynamics, I can give you no hope, except for you and your theory, but to collapse in the deepest humiliation. That's you, Danny. Have a nice day.
So just to bring Nathan Thompson into the conversation, he answered your question, how can we have gas pressure without a container, by asserting his religious fundamentalist belief that the sky is a vacuum, Nathan. That was his answer. Go outside, that proves the sky is a vacuum.
I mean, we've been hearing this for 5 years. It's pathetic. And it's sad that rather than embrace the truth of the Bible and how it depicts a flat, enclosed, stationary Earth, these heliocentric creation scientists as scientifically illiterate hypocrites. And that's exactly what Danny has done. He set himself up to be exposed as a scientifically illiterate hypocrite, and that's what we've done here. Good job.
Yeah, good job to you for asking him, because that's what's led him down this trail of abject humiliation.
Do you know, I just want to address how he described Nathan's approach. He called it, what did he call it now? Ambush. Well,
Ambush.
I would call it very clear, concise, targeted, absolutely to the point questioning that he couldn't answer. That's the other interpretation. Nathan was very clear, very concise, and Danny could not, did not, and shouldn't have answered, because no matter what he said then, he wasn't going to get a good answer across. But even with 3, 4, 5, 6 months down the line, as much writing in space as he needs, and as much so-called science in inverted commas, it's no better. So part of me wishes that he would have given some kind of answer, but the other part of me thinks, you've got to call it an ambush, Danny, because, well, you haven't got an answer for this. Yet your claim is that you haven't met an answer or a question that you haven't been able to refute yet. Yeah, you have. Nathan's asked it to you, and you failed miserably. But this guy will. This guy will not talk. This guy won't talk to us, right? And he should be talking to us, because we're saying, guys, you can't answer this question with any science. And here's the other thing that's interesting, Danny. Why is it that there's no experiment that demonstrates gas pressure next to a vacuum without a membrane? Why is it that you have to give us a Boltzmann formula that calculates the probability of gas distribution with a perfect ideal gas? Why is there no experiment for that? Is it that maths needs to substitute with some kind of probability calculator? At least with Cavendish, you've got some kind of loosely termed experiment that you can visualise, even though it's not really one. But what have you got for gas pressure without a container? You haven't actually got anything, and we're asking for that science. But there isn't any, is there? You've only got maths, and we know that maths is correlative, it's not causative. Nathan?
Which one?
Tom, it's funny how he...
Go on, either, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's funny how he takes his science hat off and then he puts on his fairy tale poetry hat when it comes to all the verses about Scripture. So all these creations who believe in the Bible are ipso facto hypocrites and scientifically illiterate. They just set themselves up to be exposed. So excellent debunking. This great video, John. You do a great job talking about the science. I really enjoyed being here, guys.
So we haven't touched on something that is definitely worth reiterating. So in the clip that was played out at the beginning of this, he explains that people haven't approached him and asked him, and he hasn't came across a single question he can't refute. They've just gone online and done a Google search, and they haven't come across him. So number one, why would you call it an ambush when you positively encourage that on a radio interview about a book that you're there promoting? So that's my first issue. The second issue is, and this is the bit we haven't covered yet, he has actually publicly responded to this question once before. So his off-the-bat reaction was total silence. He then, Dr. Danny Faulkner, went forth, did a little Google search, and came across the redneck retard we call hillbilly blue balls, or the photosynthetic retard. Now, the photosynthetic retard demonstrated gas pressure without a container by utilising 2 containers. And that was cited by Dr. Danny Faulkner in the first instance. Now, given that also resulted in abject humiliation at the hands of us, he's now gone on to just beg the question and assert his religious fundamentalist belief that the sky is a vacuum, having shown 2 containers proving our point by way of a quick Google search. The very thing he criticised flat earthers for, and said that they should approach him. And when one does and asks a question that he can't answer, well, that's an ambush.
It's called hypocrisy and double standards. I just want to make I want to make 3 points. Yeah. Go on, Nathan.
Yeah, one of my categories for Geoparty the other night was the globe is a cult full of crybaby gamma males. And that's exactly what Danny did. He waited because he couldn't answer the question live in person, even though he challenges us to come up to him and ask questions. And he paid to come to an event I was speaking at. I was the second speaker on the main stage. Then he's such a crybaby gamma male. When I record him unable to answer a question, he claims that's an ambush. What a joke, dude. You welcomed that by putting out the challenge that you can answer any questions that flat earthers have. There's no question you don't have an answer to.
Correct.
Whatever.
It's a bit like one of our well-known protagonists complaining that he's being harassed and then poking the bear after the event, which we won't go there. But Danny, you need to start talking to us, because it's no point in writing on answers in Genesis that you know all the answers, yet we're begging to speak to people like you that claim that you know all the answers. Because when we point out that you don't actually have any experiment that demonstrates your claim, but you've got a little bit of maths, we say that's not good enough. And we want to have the conversation with you. We won't be bitchy with you, we won't be nasty with you, but we will pull you apart because you don't have any science. It's not okay. Now, I've got 3 quick points here. First point I'm going to do is I'm going to demonstrate what happens when I try and sign up to this email me with new blogs post by Danny Faulkner. If I put in my email address there, right, it wouldn't let me do this before. It's now obviously going to let me do it, but it didn't let me do it before. Whoops, your newsletter sign up did not work. Now, that's the 4th time I've tried to do that. I must be blocked on his page for whatever reason. Don't really know why. It's because he's cornered and he doesn't like it. But I want to address these 2 points that I find stark. I don't want to go over old ground because John's already gone over the ground that I kind of want to go over. I don't want to go over again. He says, I usually ask flat earthers, given this pressure imbalance in the atmosphere, why there is no upwards rush of air from ground level to equalise the much lower pressure aloft. I've never had a flat earther answer this question, though the answer is obvious. Yeah, it is obvious. If the sky was a vacuum, that is exactly what would happen, Danny. But the sky can't be a vacuum, hence the reason why it doesn't rush off into space. The gas laws apply, and they're not. Earth's not a special pleadings case. The gas laws apply, and all of the pressure would evacuate into the vacuum of space immediately, because that's what gas pressure does. It seeks the lower pressure, and it bursts into it like a balloon. But when you claim that nobody's ever answered this question, though the answer is obvious, the answer is only obvious if you're applying the science, because you can't have gas pressure without a container. I'm not going to go through the rest of this paragraph, but this is my 3rd point. Why does it matter? Therein lies the answer to the original flat earth question here. How the Earth's atmosphere can exist next to the vacuum of space. The simple answer is, no one suggests that it does. Yeah, you do. It's your model, Danny. So you can argue that the gradient gradually disperses off to nothing, but your model does put gas pressure next to a vacuum without a barrier. It's your model that tells us that's what the position is. So although you say no one suggests that it does, the heliocentric model, the Earth orbiting around the Sun and rotating once on its axis, but as an atmosphere that we're breathing, unfortunately, Danny, your own model does. And you've got to push that narrative because it is your religion. Well, you can't do it. You can't demonstrate it. And without experiment, it's pseudoscience. Stop trying to avoid us, engage with us, and let's have a conversation. But we know that you will not do it. Why? Because you're cornered. You're weaseling. And it's not okay. I'm done.
So, just a quick correction. You can't just say that the gas pressure dissipates to nothing. That is a second law of thermodynamics violation. That's what he has said, and it is a second law of thermodynamics violation. Secondly, just because for some strange, deluded reason, Danny Faulkner's under the impression that this is specifically or especially for him. Well, no, we've put this question to other people. Coincidentally, a teacher, now he goes by the name of Conspiracy Cats, and I'm going to quote that teacher's response to this very question, long before you were involved in this question being put to you by Nathan Thompson. So we asked Conspiracy Cats, how can you have gas pressure without a container? Same very question. And his response was, quote, without the container, there can be no pressure. End quote.
And let's not forget Conspiracy Cat's current position. He's playing the victim card. He's found a convenient excuse not to talk to any of us anymore, namely me, because he's cornered. He's admitted to Jonathan, what was his name, Haunted House, that he has sleepless nights over this because he might actually be wrong. But he needs an excuse. He needs an angle not to talk to us. And he's picked one. So he's got his excuse not to talk to us. And we know that he's cornered. And he doesn't like it. He actually thinks, Conspiracy Cats thinks that gas particles run out of energy. And that's why they slow down. Completely in violation of Newton's second law of motion, which states that an object in motion will remain in motion unless acted upon by a force. But he thinks that they run out of energy, like a car runs out of petrol, because they haven't got a lot of energy left. The guy's a complete and utter retard, but he's teaching kids physics in school, and he's telling them that these particles can run out of energy. It's completely and utterly retarded.
Oh, I got an addendum. I was just reading on, so I want some more time.
Yeah.
Can you share this screen again so we can read along with it, please?
Yeah, hold on a second. Let me share it.
There was one part I wanted to pick on, which John skidded over, but I want to go back to it because it's just so powerful.
Yeah, I haven't read this entire document, so I just scrolled down while you guys were talking. So let's spend a section here. You've heard this before. So, post-FEIC discussion. In some online discussion with some flat earthers after the FEIC, I discovered a couple of more misconceptions that many flat earthers have that further fuel their misunderstanding on these matters. Some flat earthers have read somewhere in discussions of gases that gas pressure is caused by the collisions of gas molecules with the walls of a container. From this simple statement, flat earthers have concluded that without a container, pressure cannot exist. Therefore, they reason this proves that since we have air pressure, there must be a container to provide that pressure. Of course, they further conclude that this container must be the dome atop the flat earth. Flat earthers don't seem to notice that if their understanding of pressure is true, then pressure only exists at the walls of a container and nowhere else in the gas within the container is the stupidest frigging conclusion I think I ever heard. My God, oh my God. Oh my God.
Don't sugarcoat it, John. Tell us how you really feel.
Yeah.
Oh my God, dude. We take measurements of the pressure at the walls. Now, if there were no pressure at the walls, there wouldn't be any pressure inside the container! You dumbass!
Does he think that his car tyres have only got pressure on the rubber bit? And when they get to the rim, they just have a little party and then they go, hey, you going to go and press on that tyre? Nah, I'm staying here for a bit. Send someone else.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my God!
John.
See, what scares me, guys, is that Danny is PhD in astronomy. He's got a master's in physics. The guy is not dumb, okay? He's not conspiracy cats. He's not some globehead goober. I think this guy got a lot more malicious intent. It's not just pure ignorance, guys. He is put out there to deceive. And he's got an article. You guys think I'm wrong?
Yeah. Dumb. He's just thick.
Yeah, he's dumb, man.
Yeah, you've got to remember that his PhD is in astronomy. It's a visual thing, right? It's optical, right? It's not science. He thinks it's science. He tells people it's science, but it isn't science. And that's why he's got this elevated... It's the classic Dunning-Kruger syndrome, but the one that we get blamed for having, he's actually got it because he thinks he's doing science.
Hold on a second. Let me gather myself. The correct answer is that molecules of gas collide with each other, and it is these collisions that provide pressure throughout the gas. Dr. Danny Faulkner, that is not the definition of gas pressure, son. Okay? If you didn't have the container, the gases would escape that were inside the container. They would escape. When they hit the walls, they're bouncing back and forth. every which way in every different direction inside the container. If there was no container, there would be no gas left that would shoot out eventually, right?
Yeah,
So that's not the definition of gas pressure, son. Do you want to know the definition of gas pressure? We can come up here and I'll show you it, okay? I'll stepwise walk
Let's have the
through.
NASA one. Let's have the NASA one.
I've had it on screen. I've had it on screen. I've had it on screen, John. It's fine.
Okay, the pressure of a gas is the force that the gas exerts on the walls of the container, Dr. Danny Faulkner. This is from the chemistry department in Elmhurst. This is from sciencelearn.org. The atoms and molecules in gases are much more spread out than in solids or liquids. They vibrate and move freely at high speeds. A gas will fill any container, but if the container is not sealed, the gas will escape. Let's move that. Let's make it quick. The kinetic molecular theory of Boyle's gas law from Elmhurst University. Observations about pressure may be explained using the following ideas. The rapid motion and collisions of molecules with the walls of the container, Dr. Danny Faulkner, Mike Discipline, causes pressure. Mike Discipline. Thank you. Let's do it again. The rapid motion and collisions of molecules with the walls of the container causes pressure. Let's go to Chem Liber text, talking about gas pressure. Pressure is caused by gas molecules hitting the walls of the container, Dr. Danny Faulkner. With a smaller volume, the gas molecules will hit the walls, not the walls of each other, Dr. Danny Faulkner, the walls of the container more frequently, and so the pressure is increased. You, sir, are some type of, I don't know, Mr. Magoo type of weasel, because you said the correct answer is that molecules of the gas collide with each other, and it is these collisions that provide the pressure throughout the gas, implying that we don't need a container, we just need the gas molecules hitting each other. You're a weasel, sir. So it is the mutual, now it's the mutual collisions of gas molecules that provide pressure within a gas. A container isn't necessary to provide pressure. There you go, folks. Pure retard. Right there. I don't need to say it anymore. You're finished. Hence, it is possible to have a containerless gas, as I've described. You should be tackled, right, by a bunch of men, really strong men in white suits, horse tranquilized and shuffled off the shady meadows in an ambulance, and immediately the surgeon should be called, the neurosurgeon should be called for an emergency lobotomy, sir. That's it. You're done. I don't need to talk about you anymore. You're toe tagged. You're 3 times dead. Have a good one. Clown.
I'd just like to say, can you show us that, please? Beyond your fundamentalist religious belief that the sky is a vacuum, please demonstrate that mutual collisions of gas molecules provides pressure within a gas and therefore a container isn't necessary. I'd like him to show me that beyond his fundamentalist religious belief that the sky is a vacuum. Show us that, please.
This is the biggest problem, because they can calculate it using the Boltzmann formula, but they can't demonstrate it within experiment. Well, by definition, if you can't demonstrate it within experiment, it's pseudoscience. If you calculate it within a Boltzmann equation, like Conspiracy Cats does, that's affirming the consequent. It's affirming... what you're doing is you're reifying your maths to be what you want it to be, because you haven't got an experiment to substitute. It's not okay.
Can I have another PS? Can I have another PS, please?
It's begging the question, affirming the consequent and reification fallacy. You're absolutely right, Anthony.
Can I have another PS?
Go on, then.
This is getting better and better. Are you presenting?
Yeah, you're on.
Regarding this ongoing discussion, some flat earthers recently have begun arguing that physicists now don't think that gravity is a force at all. Yeah, gravity is not a force. We'll get to that in a second, Dr. Danny Faulkner. That would be news to all the physicists that I know. It certainly was news to me. Yes, in addition to being an astronomer, I am a physicist. What's going on in Newtonian theory? Dr. Danny Faulkner, Sir Isaac Newton never, ever, ever proposed a single scientific theory in his life. What on earth are you talking about? In Newtonian theory, gravity is a force that acts across empty space. He never proposed one. How could he propose a theory when in the Principia he said he doesn't even feign hypotheses? How'd you do that trick? How did you get a scientific theory without a validated, confirmed hypothesis when Newton said he doesn't even feign hypotheses? How'd you do that trick, Dr. Danny Faulkner? Oh my God, the Newtonian theory has no explanation. Then it's not a scientific theory, because scientific theories provide explanations. That's what they do. I can spend days on this.
Yeah, and the other thing is, he's about to go into Albert Einstein. Now remember, he did not mention Einstein in his book when he spoke about gravity, and the key word that he's not going to mention in this next couple of sentences is that Albert Einstein defined gravity as the effect of the curvature of space-time caused by the uneven distribution of mass. Forget what it's caused by. The key bit that Einstein said was that it's an effect. Let's see how he describes Albert Einstein's definition of gravity. John, take it away.
Albert Einstein published his theory of general relativity a century ago. GR attempts to explain GR attempts to explain gravity's action at a distance. No, it doesn't. Because action at a distance would clobber the hell out of Einstein's theories, both GR and SR. I don't know where you made this shit up from. GR attempts to explain no.
Does he not? Hold on. George Musa quote. So, gravity acting at a distance. What was it? How did he phrase it? Oh, yes, snapped the wand in two.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is a train wreck right here. Number one, if GR attempts to explain gravity's action at a distance, see, that was Newtonian's law, action at a distance with gravity. Yeah, if GR attempted to explain that, then there wouldn't be a law anymore. It would go to a theory. But you said Newtonian theory. Why would he even need to do that? If Newtonian theory, this is such a convoluted gaggle of a cluster screw, sir.
Yeah.
You're finished.
He doesn't understand what. Hold on, there's a couple of things I pick up on here. He doesn't understand what science is. He doesn't understand the difference between experimental data and the connection to theory. When detailing what Newton's actually providing, he calls it theory. Well, no, it isn't. But he also makes note that he is, and I quote, "I am a physicist." What does the physic? What's that part of the etymology of the word physicist? What's that bit of the word mean, John?
Which one? Sorry, Nathan.
In the word physicist, what's the physic bit? What's that mean?
Yeah, physics. Yeah, physical.
Physical. Oh, he is a physicist. Quote, "I am a physicist." Is that so, Daniel Faulkner? Well, Mr. Dealing with the physical world, a container isn't necessary to provide pressure, end quote. I'd like you to show me that physically, in reality, because you're a physicist, right? Well, in, 3 sentences before your statement that you deal with the physical, that would be the physical natural world that we inhabit, and you're detailing a specific part about the physical natural world we inhabit. And your statement as such, quote, "A container isn't necessary to provide pressure," end quote. You're going to need to show that physically as a physicist. And that's what you're going to do. You want to claim you're a physicist, you're not, you're an incompetent fool. But if you're going to write down that you're a physicist, you're going to damn well show us it physically.
I got another PS, by the way. Are you still sharing this?
We are.
Dr. Danny Faulkner, the problem is these same physicists also make statements in other contexts that make it clear that gravity is a force.
Really?
Okay, not a problem. You want to play that game, Danny Faulkner? Let's check that out. Let's see what we can do here.
Just while you're looking that up, Nathan Thompson, gravity is not a force, right?
Yeah. According to mainstream science, they'll say gravity is not a force. According to George, it's not a force. Relativity superseded Newtonian gravity, and that's the effect.
Woohoo!
Okay, we ready?
Yeah, go.
George Musser, Scientific American, November 2015. Einstein created his general theory of relativity, which provides our modern understanding of gravity, with the express purpose of expunging non-locality from physics. Isaac Newton's gravity acted at a distance, as if by magic, and general relativity snapped the wand in two by showing that the curvature of space-time, and not an invisible force, you see that, Danny, gives rise to gravitational attraction. So, Danny, you said that many of these people, and you, say that gravity is a force. There's a problem in the hen house. We got a rooster in there. From Caltech, Einstein came up with the theory of general relativity in 1915, the prototype of all modern gravitational theories. Its crucial ingredient, involving a colossal intellectual jump, is the concept of gravitation not as a force, Dr. Danny Faulkner, but as a manifestation of the curvature of spacetime. Brian Cox, there isn't really a force of gravity at all, Dr. Danny Faulkner. George Musser, 2019, gravity is not a force, Dr. Danny Faulkner, but you can think of it as a force. From your alma mater wiki, gravity is most accurately described by the general theory of relativity proposed by Albert Einstein in 1915, which describes gravity not as a force, Dr. Danny Faulkner. From the universe today in general relativity, gravity is not a force between masses, Dr. Danny Faulkner. From the University of California, Riverside, strictly speaking, gravity is not a force, Dr. Danny Faulkner. From phys.org, according to this theory, gravity is not a force, Dr. Danny Faulkner. From New Scientist, so although Earth appears to be pulled towards the sun by gravity, there is no such force, Dr. Danny Faulkner. From Phys Libra Text, the answer is that gravitation is not a force between objects, Dr. Danny Faulkner. From the physics hypertext book, gravity isn't a force, Dr. Danny Faulkner. From Joyland Bloomfield from Cornell University. So, to summarize, general relativity says that matter bends spacetime, and the effect of that bending of spacetime is to create a generalized kind of force that acts on objects. However, it isn't a force as such that acts on the object, but rather just the object following its geodesic path through spacetime. Dr. Danny Faulkner. So what's up with these, sir? Let me guess. I cherry-picked them. Stick with that one,
yeah,
clowns.
John, just hold your page a sec, John, because I just want to read back that part where he says, or maybe you can find it for me, where he says that he does not know of any physicists that think that gravity is not a force. Where did he say that? Was it? There it is. Regarding this ongoing discussion, some flat earthers recently have begun arguing that physicists now don't think that gravity is a force at all. That would be news to all the physicists that I know. There is a possibility that he doesn't actually know any physicists, so that might not actually be false. But I can think of a PhD in the University of Amsterdam off the top of my head. His name is... oh, what's his bloody name now? Dr. Eric Verlinde. He literally says gravity... they know that gravity does not exist. It's time that they start shouting it. Well, how many physicists do you actually know, Danny? Because John's just given about 10, plus Dr. Eric Verlinde, that all say that gravity is not a force. So that begs the question, how many physicists do you know, Danny? Because I don't think you actually know any. And then that statement might actually be true, otherwise it's a lie.
Can I reiterate my point just at that stage? So, what couple of pop yourself on mute. Sorry I know I'm interrupting you, Anthony. He makes it clear that a container is not needed, and then 3 sentences later states that he is a physicist. So he's going to need to prove he's a physicist by showing this physically. If that's his standard and his claim that he deals in the physical, then he's going to need to demonstrate physically his claim that stands in contradiction of the second law of thermodynamics, that a container isn't required. He's going to have to demonstrate entropy not increasing.
Can I have another PS?
Yes, go.
You got to give me a break, Your Honor, because I had time to debrief my witness here. So gravity is a force. He's still on that nonsense, right? And we just pummeled that. The next one. Physicists call gravity a fundamental force. Really? There are 4 fundamental forces. Along with gravity, the fundamental forces are the electromagnetic force, the weak nuclear force, and the strong nuclear force. Really? From your alma mater wiki, the standard model of particle physics is a theory describing 3 of the 4 fundamental forces: the electromagnetic, weak, strong, and what? Not including what? I can't hear you, Danny. Not including the gravitational force. I tell you what, I don't think you made a factual statement in this entire document from what it's looking like. I could go on. Like I said, I'm going to have to take a shower after I'm done with just this. So I'm going to stop. I'm not going to go on. So no more PSs.
I do want to go back to. Do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take a 2-minute interlude. I'm going to play a clip from Nathan Oakley, 1980. It's Conspiracy Cats, and it's the question that we're talking about today. And I want you to notice, if this is the clip I think it is, notice what he does with his whiteboard when he drops all the dots on it. He draws gas pressure without a container, and he shows it without. It's just ridiculous. So let's go back to this. It's an oldie, but it's good.
Ig Nobel Prize for something that seems stupid but is actually quite interesting. Realistically, I think this guy is absolutely idiotic. There's no way that this high school teacher is ever going to falsify the second law of thermodynamics. So, Conspiracy Cats, just a gentle reminder that you are only worthy of a certificate of stupidity, because there is no way on God's green earth you are ever going to falsify the second law of thermodynamics. But I will re-ask the question, as you seem to be embarking on a personal attack mission against myself rather than simply answering a question which you have already backed our assertion on.
Now, what Nathan is saying is you can't have pressure without a container.
Without the balloon, these air particles aren't going to be striking anything. Therefore, there is no pressure.
So, Conspiracy Cats, the question, as ever, how do you have gas pressure without a container? For those not in the know, the reason for this question is fairly simple. Earth, if you believe you live on a sphere, is an open system. You can leave, matter can leave, rockets can leave, gas can leave. It's definitely an open system. But if it's an open system, how do you have gas pressure? The necessary antecedent for gas pressure is a container, as detailed by Conspiracy Cats. So, Conspiracy Cats, bum boy, it's time for you to do one of 2 things. Accept that your model of Earth is complete nonsense, a contradiction in terms, or falsify the second law of thermodynamics. How do you have gas pressure without a container? I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you.
So obviously in this one, Nathan was demonstrating the gas pressure point. Now I want to go back to the drawing bit that he draws, because he actually draws gas pressure without a container, and you can't do it. Without the container, there can be no pressure. That is the problem, isn't it? Danny Faulkner can't do it, Conspiracy Cats can't do it. Professor Phil Bellend can't do it. None of them can do it. It's not good enough, guys. You guys are supposed to be the leading authority in physics. It's rubbish. Come on. Nathan Thompson, do you want to add anything?
No, I don't have anything at the moment. Great show so far, guys.
Nathan Oakley, do you want to say any final words?
No, I've not got anything. That's the 2018 quote. That was superseded. So it used to be, quote, conspiracy cats. Without the balloon, there is no pressure. And then the more updated one was the 2019 quote, which is without the container, there can be no pressure. So yeah, he's given us a couple. There's probably more than that out there from conspiracy cats, because ultimately he's a teacher and he's teaching. It's correct. You know, there's nothing wrong with that statement. It's absolutely factually accurate. The only problem is it backs our argument and debunks space. So thanks for that, conspiracy cats on both counts.
And remember, this is the guy that teaches children, your kids, teaches your children physics, because he gets paid to. No matter how right or wrong it is, that's what they get told to teach kids. Well, it's not right, is it? Is that okay, really? I don't think it is. John?
Yeah, Dr. Danny Falk, it's over for him. Now he can whistle past the graveyard. He always does that. He just whistle past, because I pummeled him in June of 2016 when I first came out here. I ran into Dr. Danny Faulkner. He's got the same answers he did back then. I destroyed them back then. I was green around the gills just a few weeks out here. I mean, it's over for you. Like I said, go ahead and whistle past the graveyard. Yes, students will still sign up for your classes. You probably got tenure by now. But you've got nothing. There is no substance. All you have are fallacies on top of fallacies. And in most cases, from what I can judge here, some serious delusions of grandeur and some problems with pretentiousness. But mainly delusional. That's what I found. It's scary, sir. You are scary. And I've already toe tagged you twice. I'm going to make this a toe tag. I'm taking this over on mine. Right? We'll just do it 3 times and then just put the end of it. Because I don't need to speak to you. There's no explanation that you can give. You can't recover. Thank you.
There we go. I'm just going to close by saying that I wanted to go back to this. Normally John jumps all over this one. For some reason he gave him an easy ride, and I don't think it's worthy of an easy ride. So I just want to dwell on this point a little bit. Earlier in the presentation, John read this and didn't jump on it. But vacuums don't suck. Pressure is the force per unit area. Well, if space is the infinite vacuum of infinite nothingness, you don't actually have a unit area. You have infinity. So if you have a pressure that is the force per infinity, what happens when you multiply anything by infinity? On that note,
I jumped on that. I said force per unit surface area. He left that part off.
Yeah. It could have been dwelled on a little bit further, but it was only nitpicking. It wasn't meant as a serious... But the point is, all of this article really is not good enough for a PhD, especially in astronomy, because you pass that off as science and you claim to be a physicist. Danny, you don't know what scientific method is. You clearly think that pseudoscience is science. It really isn't okay, because you're telling people this stuff.
Don't be calling me out for my lack of dwelling.
No, I just want to stamp on him.
You covered it, and I'll reiterate it again if you want to. You know, ultimately speaking, the guy's a pretender clown, and he doesn't have a science acumen. Now, he's kidding himself that he's a scientist, and that's the problem. The people who are challenging us in this arena, they've got this guy to look up to perpetuate the rhetoric of their religion being heliocentrism. He's one of your high priests. He's one of your teachers, one of your gurus. And this is what he gives you. It's useless.
Yeah,
it doesn't even follow the actual pretender clown muppets like Musa. It doesn't even toe the line with people like him, who can actually parrot the rhetoric and will go against idiots like Fight the Flat Earth when they state the rhetoric incorrectly. They'll get corrected. No, gravity's not a force. No, you can think of it as a force. Yeah, that's what people like Musa do. People who actually understand the rhetoric. This guy's a complete clown. He's useless to anybody who wants to argue from the heliocentric side of this debate. Useless. Like, literally, he's got nothing to offer. So, other than him being somebody out there to punt a book for his own selfish self, he's got nothing to offer you. Don't buy his book, because it certainly won't help you against people like me.
No. John, I'm going to give you the final word, or I'm going to ask you for your final word, then Nathan Oakley, and then I'm going to finish with Thompson, because Thompson was the guy that started all this, and I think it's very fitting that he gets to have the final sentence. John, final words. You're on mute.
You damn Skippy I was. Nathan Thompson, you need to read the chat here in Skype. I got a little message for you. Do you roger that?
Yeah, I heard you. I'll check it out. I can't check it right now because I'm in with you guys.
Okay, but check the Skype.
Right after.
Make sure you do it right after. You'll be contacting me after that. And you said that Nathan Thompson started this?
Well,
no, he did.
He started it directly with Danny Faulkner at the convention, and I think it's only fitting he gets the final say.
Okay, and I understand that, and he deserves it. But who actually started that?
Let's just make it clear. So it's a third party, right? So we specifically asked Nathan Thompson to go and ask that specific question of Danny Faulkner because we knew he was there, and he had the tenacity and the gumption to actually do it. However, this question was put to Dr. Daniel Faulkner personally by Quantum Eraser in 2016. He has had this question put to him before. He didn't have an answer then. Well, the answer he gave was the same as the answer he gave now. But to have it put to him in person was only brought up as a result of him bringing out a book and claiming as a lie, because he'd already been challenged by Quantum Eraser with this very question, that he'd never had an argument he could overcome. Well, that's a total lie. He couldn't overcome Quantum Eraser's question when it was put to him in 2016. Hence, Nathan Thompson was asked if he could go and pose the question again in person, which he did.
Yeah. Okay, John.
Still deserves kudos. Big kudos, Nathan Thompson.
Yeah. I wasn't taking his kudos away. I just remembered the day that we sat in there and we knew Nathan was there and Danny Faulkner was there. And then we said, hey, let's get in touch with Nathan and tell him that. And we knew, like you said, Nathan had the intestinal fortitude and the gumption to go and ask him. Right? So, yeah, that's all I got. I think everything's been said. He can't, Dr. Danny Faulkner, you can't recover, son. Sorry. Have a nice day.
Mr. Oakley, final words.
That's it. You're not a physicist, you're not a scientist, and you don't even think that you're the creme de la creme of globetards references, because you're not. You know, you are useless to anybody on the opposing side of this argument. You don't have any arguments to provide. What you have provided is 2014 arguments that are very easy to overcome and stand in violation of natural law. Thoroughly useless on all counts. I completely agree with Quantum Eraser. I've got nothing more to add. Thank you very much for having me, Anthony. Superb hosting, apart from the intro.
My final words are this. Why is it that they don't have any experiments whatsoever and all they've got is Boltzmann equations? They don't have any science to support this story. That's the key point you've got to ram home against these Boltard religitards. They don't have any experiment. Maths isn't a substitute for experiment, it's pseudoscience. We need to see the experiment that demonstrates it. We know that we can't demonstrate it. It cannot be true, guys. Nathan Thompson, you have the mic, you have the final word, sir. This is your moment to finish off this debacle with this Danny Faulkner.
Yeah, the reason they don't have it in science is because so-called scientists today, guys, are more akin to witch doctors. They've memorized superstitious tribe rhetoric, and then they promote their booga booga nonsense. But, you know, atheism is one form of rebellion against God, and hypocrisy is another form of rebellion. And Danny Faulkner is a poster child for the hypocrite. He has no science. He's double speaking. convoluted arguments that make no sense. He doesn't understand terms. He doesn't understand mainstream science and what it teaches. Is like, dude, get with the program. And the people out there who want to say, you know, oh, Nathan Thompson's harassing kids, or Nathan Thompson harasses Danny Faulkner, we got to remember that in history, heretics were the good guys, the heroes that stood against all odds and confronted powerful people and went against the establishment. So if you want to sit there and say, oh, Nathan, you know, he's going against the status quo and exposing evil, guys, they're lying to all the kids. They're stealing $60 million a day, and that's just NASA. I mean, it's probably about $100 million a day worldwide. Now we're running into this nonsense with this pandemic. They want to do contact tracing. They want to monitor everything. They want to establish biometrics, tracking of everyone. I mean, people need to wake up with what's going on around us. I really appreciate you having me on the show. Remember, guys, keep exposing evil. Sharing is caring. If anyone has anything for me, it's flatearthflyers@gmail.com. I appreciate you guys on the show. Nathan, Anthony, and John, you guys are all legends, bro.
And by way of final note...
Thank you, sir. Make sure you check that chat.
I will, right away. Later, guys. I'll check it right now.
Yeah, made that a priority. I know what it's about. Check it out, man.
And just by way of final note, Danny Faulkner, you weren't ambushed. You were just asked a question that you were not able to refute, contrary to your claim that you could. Ladies and gentlemen, have a really good day. It's great being a flat earther today.